Welcome into the Situation Room. I'm Angus Hout. Happy Thursday edition of the Situation Room. I was sicker than a dog with a head cold yesterday, so just didn't want you guys to listen to me struggle to talk for 25 minutes. So, yeah, welcome into the Thursday edition of the Situation Room. Got lots to talk about. We're going to talk about the fact that the Jets are on top of the world and people are still hating on this team. Talk about the Pierre-Luc Dubois contract. Logan Stanley getting close to returning, Perfetti on the third line, and we're also going to talk a little Ivan Provorov and that whole situation. But yeah, so stick around. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Nation Network channel. If you want to listen to anything about the Oilers, Flames, Jets, Toronto Maple Leafs, or the Vancouver Canucks, well, stick around. Check out the Nation Network. It's pretty cool. And finally, I gotta say, we are sponsored by PointsBet. I wasn't given a script, so if I'm wrong, this is because my employers haven't sent me anything. But yeah, PointsBet, check it out. I believe only in Ontario for now, but they're looking to get us across the rest of Canada. So hopefully that happens. So let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets. They are still on top of the Western Conference. They're looking pretty darn good. You can't dislike this team. So, and yet there's still people that are like, hey, well, we don't believe in the Jets. They lost to the Montreal Canadiens. I would like to remind y'all that the Dallas Stars just blew it to the San Jose Sharks. 3-5 was that final. Still a lot less nice than the 4-1 loss to Montreal, but you know, teams can lose to worse teams. So, I mean, when you're one of the best, everyone else is worse than you. So, yeah, the Jets, they can lose a couple games here and there. And I mean, the Jets just weren't prepared to go into Montreal. You know, you kind of believed in the team, but they weren't in it. Kyle Connor had a couple of bad plays. Ville Heinola, who is still in the lineup for some reason going into Toronto, he's had some brutal games. I know he's had like moments of decentness, but man, I can't believe that Ville Heinola is still kicking around with the Jets. Like I'd be putting in Sandberg. He's scratched tonight, healthy scratch tonight. So unless Sandberg's not feeling at 100%, I think that Ville Heinola is just having his moment in the spotlight just to get traded away. I genuinely believe that just because we got Logan Stanley, who's coming up close, getting close to being healthy again. I just don't see I don't see Ville Heinola hanging around after the trade deadline. Just because I think the team wants him gone, and you've got Logan Stanley who wants to get back into the lineup. You have Dylan Sandberg who wants in on the lineup on a regular basis. Neil Pionk isn't playing his best game, so maybe he's out, and the Jets look for a couple of draft picks because of Neil Pionk. But there's also not a lot of teams that have cap space right now. I mean, we're in cap, like every team seems like they're in cap hell. I'm sure there's well, Arizona obviously isn't, and Ottawa, they're a bunch of cheap asses as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens come trade deadline, because the Jets, they have quite a bit of young talent that wants to play, but they don't have a whole lot of spaces. And if they want to be a legitimate cup contending team, they might have to get rid of these young pieces in order to bring a guy in for a single year, maybe even 2 years, this year and next year. Because really the Jets only have a 2-year window, and then it's closed. And let's be honest about that. Like Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's got this year. He'll probably re-sign with the Jets for, I would assume, a Blake Wheeler type 1-year contract, an $8 million, maybe even a $9 million contract. And then, yeah, this team is going to go through some big changes in the next 2 years, but the team's window is now. So, we have to stop complaining about this team. Oh, they lost to Montreal and they had a bad game against Buffalo. Well, Buffalo's a mighty hungry team. And yeah, the Jets could have lost to Buffalo, but they didn't. So, you know, great, fantastic. Sometimes your goalie's going to steal a game or two. The unfortunate loss to Detroit, that happens. You got hungry teams, and sometimes they just get an early lead and they just hold on, which is unfortunate, which had happened in Detroit last week. So, like, I'm not worried about this team a whole lot, but people need to get off their horses about this team. Like the Jets have, like, they're tied for third in goals against. Like they have 116 goals against is what I believe I had read earlier when I was prepping for this. So like the Jets are in a good spot defensively, especially goaltending wise. I talked about Connor Hellebuck with John Scott. So check that podcast out as well. That's on the Nation Network. Just want to sneeze. Yeah, this team is a lot better than a lot of people think they are. But this team, I would just want to sneeze. This is hard. This team has a lot of like the second best of everything. Right now, Connor Hellebuck is the second best goalie in the league. Right now, Cole Perfetti is the second best rookie in the league. Bowness probably second, third best coach in the league. Josh Morrissey, second best defender in the league. There's one other guy that's competing for something, but there's all these guys that are like the second best at what they do. And having a bunch of guys that are the second best at what they do in the NHL right now is pretty darn impressive. So don't worry about this team. Like, they're doing things well. They are playing a little bit more sloppy. And I think that they've forgotten that, to be the best, you have to play like the best. And you are going to play down to your opponents. I mean, I'm excited for this game against Toronto tonight because Toronto should be a fantastic team to see where the Jets really are. Like, Toronto has 61 points in 45 games. Winnipeg, 59 in 45. Toronto's pretty good. This is how you know how good your team really is. The New Jersey Devils, that's a team I'm really excited to see against the Jets, but that won't be until next month. But yeah, the Leafs and the Jets, that's going to be a great game. That's where we're going to see, where we're going to tell where the Jets really are tonight. Not like the Jets have a ton of games where they need to see where they are, but this is the first time where everyone's been healthy and everyone's ready to go. So we can see what the Jets truly are made of tonight against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I still don't think this team is bad. I think they've had a couple of bad games recently, but which team has a perfect season? Not one. Boston's having the closest thing you can to have a perfect season, and they still haven't won every game. They're doing pretty good. Yeah, stop ripping on this team. They're great. Pierre-Luc Dubois, his next contract. I'm interested to see what this looks like. So I think he's going to sign a 1 year just to see what he can get out of the Winnipeg Jets. But the thing is he's a very unique player. You could put him on that Brady Tkachuk kind of. He's a lesser Brady Tkachuk. I would like to see him pull a Blake Wheeler kind of contract, 1 year deal, $8.25 million. But I don't see Pierre-Luc Dubois hanging around with this team long term. And I think he's going to be the first piece that leaves and pretty much wrecks this team in the long run. He's been significantly better than Laine for the last 2 seasons. I mean, he's been significantly healthier than Laine, which is nice. But Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to go off. He's going to go to a contending team, or he's going to ask for way too much money and then leave for a better team. Realistically, I think somebody would offer Pierre-Luc Dubois $10 million. He's a big body. He can score. He knows how to agitate people. He draws penalties. He takes a bunch of penalties, which will be his downfall ultimately. But Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy that's going to earn a ton of money. And I don't think Winnipeg has the space to have him stick around after next year. So next year, probably again, takes a sweet deal. And then he wants to get paid. I would guess that somebody's stupid enough to pay probably $10 million for Pierre-Luc Dubois. If I could see him sign in Winnipeg long-term for like $8 schmil, that'd be cool. But the cap isn't going up nearly as much as we thought it would be going up next year. It's only going up by $1 million rather than the $4 million that we expected earlier in the season. So the Jets are going to have to get fancy with their money because, well, the cap just doesn't work anymore. And it's kind of broken almost. Like the owners need to be willing to throw about $100 million at these players every season at this point. That's just simply it. I'm not saying those guys deserve that money, but I mean, that's just simply where the 4 major sports leagues are at, and the NHL is lagging heavily. So Pierre-Luc Dubois, I see him being a Jet for 1 year after this, and then he's probably gone. I think that, he's the first piece to fall. We'll probably watch the exodus of Connor Hellebuck. We might even see the Mark Scheifele go. I think Wheeler retires as a Jet, but you know what? No. If if Wheeler wins a cup with the Jets in the next 2 seasons, yeah, he retires a Jet. But if not, he probably goes off and pulls a Mike Modano and tries to go win his cup. Like, obviously, Modano did win his in Dallas, but go play one last year on a team that will take you. Danny Alfie Alfredson from Ottawa down to Detroit. Like, that was a weird year. Or Brodeur going to St. Louis. Guys just want to finish on top. I can't blame them, but yeah, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be the first domino that falls that ultimately has a large exodus of players out of Winnipeg, and we're going to be relying on young players. So if the Jets can find an out for a Neil Pionk for draft picks, that'd be fantastic. And then trade one of your young guys, two of your young guys for a veteran player that the Jets can 100% take on. And, a middle six or a middle pairing defenseman would be ideal for this team. I would like to see Neil Pionk gone. He's just too much chaos for this team right now, which is unfortunate. He's a good player. He seems to be a well-liked guy. I just don't think his playing standards are where they need to be with this Winnipeg Jets, especially if they want to be a cup contending team. So go find yourself, trade him for picks, trade probably Stanley and Heinola for a legitimate second pairing defenseman who can play with Brennan Dillon. I would like another shutdown guy, to be perfectly honest. And then you just carry on. So yeah, with guys like, especially with Logan Stanley coming close to returning, like he was wearing a full contract jersey today, and he's missed a bunch of time, like 15 games straight, and I think he's missed 36 of 38. And I'm not mad at Logan Stanley, like, you get hurt, but with the way that Dylan Samberg has played, he has a mistake every game. But I think he's more consistent than Logan Stanley is, and Logan Stanley doesn't bring you much more to the table than anyone else. So trade Mr. 6'7", trade Heinola, who hasn't worked out. I'm still shocked that he's in the third pairing tonight against Toronto. And Samberg's healthy scratch, but that's why I think Heinola's on his way out, because he's getting those looks so he can play in the NHL, and then other teams are like, oh yeah, let's take him. I'd be heartbroken if they traded number 54, Dylan Samberg. Yeah, Samberg probably sticks around in my opinion. Stanley would be what would the management do? Like, there's the logical things that you would do, and then there's the illogical things that management does. Kevin Cheveldayoff happens to be a really good manager, and he sends down the right guys. I mean, like, Tucker Poolman never worked out. Johnny Kovacevic is like the only guy that we've seen leave Winnipeg, and you're like, oh, that sucks. But how many guys have we seen leave and just like they never worked out to their potential? Like, we see all this great potential, we can trade them out, and then they never work out. Jack Roslovic, you probably talk about him. And even Laine just hasn't, like, he's been great. He's a great scorer, but he's just never, I don't think he's ever hit that point where he's been beyond great. He's a great player, but he's never moved on past that. So, yeah, I just think that the Jets are really smart about who they move out, and I think that they see something in Logan Stanley that we don't see. So my gut tells me that Samberg stays around, but my brain's telling me that Stanley sticks around. But I see two of those young defenders gone. 2 out of the 3 of them are gone, and hopefully Neil Pionk for a couple of picks, because I think that the Jets are going to be in a position where they're going to need great young players from teams and in the long run, and Neil Pionk is going to fetch you those picks. Unfortunately, I don't know if the money works out necessarily for Neil Pionk to get traded out for picks, but the Jets need to find a proper middle pairing defenseman. And then if they could find a middle 6 forward as well, I'd be stoked. This team would be legitimately amazing if they could find, that defender that they really, really need, and a middle sixer that can slide into the lineup anywhere. Like, obviously, Paul Stastny would be great, but Paul Stastny is off in Carolina, and they're unbelievably good. Like, they're on top of their division as well, and like top 3 in the NHL. So Paul Stastny isn't going anywhere. So I don't know what the Jets are going to trade for. allegedly, it's something I'd seen was Taves is going for a second and a third, which is like nothing for that guy. It'd be cool to see him here in Winnipeg, but I just don't know if he necessarily fits into this locker room. Playing wise, I'm sure he would do great, especially on like the third pair. Like this, if you were to play on the second line, you slide him into Wheeler's spot and you have Wheeler move down to the third line. Oh, be in love with this team. Like nothing could slow this team down. And then you have Mason Appleton as your fourth liner. You know you're doing something right. So I don't know if I necessarily see Jonathan Taves in Winnipeg, but I mean, the idea is still there. It feels fresh. It feels like a right thing to do. Like bring a Winnipegger here, maybe, not 5 years ago, but he is a left shot, so he wouldn't be able to fill in for Wheeler. But even if you had Taves playing your third line center, you'd be pretty all right with that, would you not be? Because you don't want to see Taves as a wing guy. Like he's never been a wing guy. So have him play your center, have him win faceoffs, have Adam Lowry slide out to the third line center, and then I guess Morgan Barron down to the. You don't want to put Perfetti on the fourth line, so I guess Morgan Barron on the fourth line, and you put Perfetti back on the second. That'd be the only way that would work. So I don't know if Jonathan Taves is necessarily the guy, but I want to see Blake Wheeler on the third line. I think that's going to be your best version of the third line. Speaking of the third line, Cole Perfetti's playing on the third line. After that awful game in Montreal, old Rick Bones, he threw the blender out at the ice and he said, go. So you got to see, and you've seen the blender only a few times from Rick Bones this year. It's been interesting. I remember that one night when it must have been the Buffalo game. Feels like it was the Buffalo game where we got to see Stenlund, Wheeler, and Lowry all in the same line. I was like, that's a thick boy line. That's your playoff line. I'd love to see that line in the playoffs. But it's interesting to see Perfetti on the third line going into Toronto. I think it's a good move. Morgan Barron was brought in to basically replace Andrew Kopp, just as a more inexperienced version of him, which, playing him on the top six, fantastic. And Perfetti having less difficult. If you had a less difficult. Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. My dad texted me and it came up, and let's carry on. Third line, you like Perfetti. He's got more of a chance to take on lesser opponents, so he can get better and learn how to take on more skilled opponents in the long run. So I think moving him down to the third line is like a good little wake up call, and it's a good spot for him so he can build a little bit more confidence, get better at what he does, and then you bring him up to the second line later on because Morgan Barron can slide up and down the lineup, no problem. Like fourth line to second line, no issues with Morgan Barron playing there. So Perfetti in the third line. I hope it's not long term, but it is a good thing to break up the Scheifele, Wheeler, and Perfetti line because I think those guys get a little bit too comfortable together and they think that they can't do anything wrong when in fact they can. Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois playing with Blake Wheeler tonight in Toronto. I like the fact that those two are so good that they get to stay together all the time. A little bit sad that Ehlers doesn't get to play up there, but Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, that's going to be fun. But the Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler, is this going to work? Did it work the first time? I don't think it did work that well the first time those two were playing together. So I don't know. I mean, no, they played Wheeler and Dubois alongside Cole Perfetti, and it did work out for a couple of games. So let's see what we can do with Kyle Connor on our left side with PLD and Wheels. This is an interesting team. They're only going to get better, and I hope they make some big trades. I think they're going to. It's just going to be hard because nobody has any more money. Yeah, that's really all I've got to say is like the Jets, they're looking good. They're shaking things up. Yeah, the games haven't been perfect lately, but I mean, we're in the middle point of the season. Not everyone's going to be playing up to snuff. The Jets aren't going to fall out of the playoff position. They just need to wake up a little bit. They'll get rolling again. They might fall out of first for a couple of weeks, but whatever. As long as the Jets aren't playing Minnesota as we come to playoff time, I think we're going to be fine. That's all I've got for today's edition of the Situation Room. I'm Angus Hout. Make sure you check out pointsbet.com. Yeah, and like and subscribe to the Nation Network on YouTube. I'm sure we'll get a script one of these days. I'll know what to say. And go Jets, go! Hopefully they can pull off another big victory and get that winning streak going again. Because man, winning streaks are fun with this team. It was just 3 in a row, and we're all mad about this. And some folks are mad about this team. Ooh, I'm not going to watch because of Hellebuck. Shut up. Have yourself a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you again on Sunday as we've got a new episode of Jets Nation Radio coming up. Peace and grace, friends, and we'll talk to you again soon.